Hello and welcome. My name is Dr. Robert Chaps. I am the Superintendent of Schools for the Mamaroneck School District. We bring to you this evening the first in a series of shows that will be filming on LMC-TV this year to give you, our community members, a glimpse of what is happening in our schools. The first show is on technology, how we are using technology in our schools to redefine teaching and learning. This show will be broken into two segments. The first segment will focus on STEM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math initiatives we're incorporating at both the middle and high school levels. The second segment will be a discussion on how we are personalizing learning through the use of iPads and the launch of our iPad one-to-one initiative. I'll introduce you in a minute to teachers that will be joining me for these conversations. But in the meantime, I want to thank you for joining us and encourage you to visit our website, www.mamkschools.org, for a wealth of information that gets updated regularly. So in this segment, we're going to focus on personalized learning and technology, and it's my pleasure to have here today three talented teachers who have been a part of our iPad initiative. And I want to begin with Mike Sammartano, our 8th grade Earth Science teacher. But we also have Andrew Chabot here and Michelle Leo, both our Chinese teacher at the high school, and Andrew is our Spanish language teacher at the high school as well. It's interesting, Mike, 3 years ago we had a conversation about how do we move from using technology in the classroom to this idea of iPads. And so maybe you can just kind of set the context to how we arrived today at both a one-to-one initiative in 9th grade and 8th grade, and talk about your experience and the work that has kind of led us to scale up a one-to-one laptop or iPad initiative.
Absolutely. I believe it was about 5 or 6 years ago, I had an idea to approach the Mamaroneck Schools Foundation and request this new technology which was out, which was the iPod Touch, along with, at that time, I believe, a digital recording studio. So my students could begin to do some more creative work around the earth science curriculum. When we got these iPod Touches, to be honest, I wasn't quite sure how they were going to fit into the curriculum, and so I began to explore some of the ways that we could use them in the classroom for recording video and audio and exploring apps and gathering research via the internet. And I quickly realized how powerful they are as personalized learning tools. And so, of course, you approached me, which was a little over 2 years now, about possibly getting the iPads, at which I jumped at the opportunity. It was very exciting. And so for the past 2 years now, into our 3rd year, the students in 8th grade at Homics in Earth Science have been using iPads on a daily basis for our lessons. The experience has been amazing. It's been bumpy at times and challenging, but it has completely transformed the way I teach, and I also think the way my students learn. If I had to pick one thing that really has changed in my classroom, it has been, as you mentioned, this idea of student autonomy and students having a little bit more control than they have traditionally had over their learning and their experience in the classroom. To give you an example, we just recently in 8th grade finished a unit on solar system astronomy. And during that unit, a more traditional classroom might be more teacher-directed, but during our unit at Homics, students spent a lot of time exploring content on their own in a variety of ways using the iPads. Whether it was working their way through some presentations that the teachers had prepared for them, exploring research on the internet, gathering data, plotting graphs, or even just today my students were in the hallway recording videos, which gives us the opportunity to not only consume information in a new way, but one of my favorite aspects is their ability to express their learning to me in a unique and different way.
So if I can say, what's interesting, because we talked about this idea of transference skills. That is, I take notes with writing with a pen and paper, and now I can take notes using an app on my iPad. But what you're pointing out is really the higher end thinking, the creativity, the synthesis that really is the hallmark of the higher end of Bloom's taxonomy. So maybe...
Yeah, I think that's something that has evolved over time. When you're first confronted with this technology, it is overwhelming, and I think a lot of teachers tend to start with very basic skill changes in terms of, as you said, instead of taking notes on a piece of paper, I'm going to do it on my iPad now, which is a wonderful way to start and to get comfortable with the technology. But in my opinion, and what I've found is that it's not truly using the technology to transform the experience. And so for me, it has become Let's use multimedia, let's use, like I said, video and audio and photography and writing and literature in science in ways that weren't really possible before the technology. And it's really, what I've really enjoyed most about it is the opportunity to say to my students, you know, we've just learned about X, Y, and Z, and I want you to show me how well you understand it, but the way in which you show me is up to you. So go explore, make me an animation, write me a paper, or write me a story, write a play, make me a video. And it's amazing to see the level of student engagement go from here to here because of those opportunities.
So let's take that notion of creativity. Michelle, if I can ask you, how as a Chinese teacher and really a language teacher, have you really in some ways transformed your practice, and how is this in some ways shaping what students are doing in your classroom?
Well, this iPad, I think it is a great thing as of now. And you know, I'm always a technology fan. You know, before the iPad, I always try to use things to help students to the way easier for them to learn Chinese. The Chinese characters is such a hard thing, and then I said if I can find a better way, and then that would be the technology place. And then this iPad is a great, not only help them easier, and then they'll really promote the creativity. You know, the learning Chinese, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, and it can be boring, repetition. And now with the iPad, I can actually really make the creativity to play, and also critical thinking. It's not just mechanically, repetition. So, for example, like recently, our student did, something. The ninth graders, they're learning about the weather, and then the kids actually are able to use the keynote to write the characters on there, and then have adding the pictures, images in it with the recording. That's tough, for the ninth graders, but they did it. An excellent job. They really did.
So you're able to have them using technology focus on their written skills, their writing skills, their verbal skills, using language.
Yeah, there's one point I want to make. Very interesting. That a lot of people might thinking about, especially the traditional teaching. They might think about, language is language, especially Chinese characters. You must handwrite in order to get it. However, I have to point it out with this technology, the kids are still able to write, which is my classroom requirement. You saw this is a type up. This is on the keynote, but whenever the kids were doing the in-class exercise and the homework, and then they will just get my, my exercise sheet from their own iPad homework the box, and then they will handwrite on the hand, with this pen to handwrite on it. So which really serve the purpose, writing on it, not just mechanically typing like this. And then this is amazing as of now. Yes, it's new, but the kids are getting there, and then I am also learning it, and it's great. And then also, I was looking at the Dr. Shep's, the 4 C's. You're saying something 4C, creativity and critical thinking and communication. How do you communicate? Listening, speaking, reading, writing, and actually the active force for the language standard. We add another one is called computing Chinese. Then they have, added that in there. I thought, oh, that's just really the way it plays well.
Well, Andrew, just to build on Michelle's comments, with you and your Spanish students, I know that I talk about how learning is not only a 8 to 3 endeavor, it's also a 3 to 8 endeavor. So how has your thinking about your classroom instruction been influenced by this tool as well? Maybe you can give us a few examples.
Absolutely. Kind of to go along with what was previously said. When we first got the iPads, one of the first things I thought about was how can this benefit me in my classroom, and what do I want to achieve? And aside from, like you said, the wonderful apps where you can take notes and write, once you move beyond that, any foreign language, be it Chinese, French, or Spanish, speaking, writing, and just being able to have a good self-expression is incredibly important. And what the iPad has done for me personally is that in my classroom, some of the apps, the kids now can, like you said, record videos. Instead of just oral presentations in front of class where sometimes kids might have that little bit of fear or a little bit of nervousness, especially speaking in a foreign language sometimes, which could be a little bit intimidating. They can record it in their iPad. They can go back and make edit and changes. They can incorporate photos. It's almost like everything is coming together. And a word I like to think of when I think of all this is everything becomes streamlined. Everything becomes more efficient. It's allowed me to be also freed up a little bit when kids are working, that I can observe what's going on, make some comments, some suggestions. And so far, some of the video presentations that kids have made, some of the apps they've used have led to some really amazing results that I couldn't be happier for. And it's almost made me want to try out some new things and say, you know what, this went really well. What can I do next? So looking into other apps like possibly iMovie in the future, other things that are a little more complex, you know, it's something that I really look forward to.
Mm-hmm. So maybe you can just touch on, Mike, in terms of your evolution as someone who's been using technology day in and day out for 3 years. What has changed now, and what are you looking forward to as we now move into providing our 8th grade students an iPad and this one-to-one both in school and out of school?
So one of the changes that I've been looking to in just the last 2 school years, thanks in part to the iPads being there, is this idea of flipping the classroom, which essentially means taking your traditional content that you would normally cover, although we don't like that word, but explore in the classroom, and making that something that students explore on their own at home using the technology. So just to give you an example, I would typically take a lesson and I would build my own video covering that content, post it online, and students will take their iPads at home and explore that content. The big benefit of this sort of approach is that the next day when the students come into the classroom, it frees up our face time with each other for more creative endeavors, more, in our case, laboratory work, more group work, where in the past, the class time would typically be taken up exploring content. And so the technology, as you said, has really expanded my classroom from my 55 minutes during the day to really all day and all night. And I get emails from students in the middle of the night, so I can attest to the fact that they're doing work at home at all hours, which I think is what we really want, this 24/7 learning.
And so to that point, as we're thinking about wrapping up, one, in my mind, I know in talking to each of you that this change in terms of resources, that we're no longer printing out and using a lot of paper. A lot of this is really transferred through the digital space. And that becomes not only more efficient, but it saves money and allows us to focus in on using budget dollars to support ongoing professional development, but the resources we need for our students. At the same time, this is new, and it's a new endeavor. And so maybe you can just kind of capture in a minute or two some of the challenges that you're finding for our students and things we need to consider as we look to expand this initiative.
I can just say one of the things that, you know, was an obstacle to overcome is that sometimes, you know, aside from technological glitches, maybe the Wi-Fi for the day doesn't work. Some kids are not too familiar with how certain apps work. So sometimes you gotta be a little patient in showing how some things work. I use a lot in my classroom Google Drive to sync documents, like you said, handouts rather than just give it a paper thing. But once in a while something doesn't sync properly, or some kids have a password issue and they can't access. But that gets resolved pretty quickly. And you know, whereas before right now it's in my classroom very minimal problems with that. But that's just a minor problem that happens with any new technology. But
one of the things that my mantras in my classroom is I encourage the kids to struggle. And I think I look at failure as a success because it's a learning experience. And so every time I'm turning my smartboard on and it doesn't quite power up right, we praise that because it's an opportunity to learn what's wrong. And so I think the students need to adopt that attitude of, you know what, when you use technology in your life, it might not always cooperate the way you want, but let's become problem solvers. And it becomes a bigger life lesson than beyond the curriculum.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I want to add something to both of you. Here, I want to show you something. You know, with this technology, cannot access. I have it's not showing. There's a password here. There you go. You know that we have the thing that the app is called a Dragon Dictation. It's excellent for for dictate the Chinese, and then will show up with the Chinese characters on the screen to really kind of like the technological assessment. If you say things wrong, they won't dictate right. So it could get students frustrated. You know, your first time you don't get it right. Or so, oh, my voice, my tone is not right. That could be getting distracting. But as a teacher, we are just, I guess, be patient and just give encouragement, and then they will hopefully eventually this dragon dictator will dictate everything.
Well, yes, and I agree. There's so many different tools, and I think being the evaluators and arbiters of apps that are appropriate for your content, because after all, this is about teaching, and it's a teaching subject areas, and so as I started out, it's about how do we use technology to redefine teaching and learning, and clearly the examples you've provided in this brief segment are not only exciting, but it speaks to, as you mentioned, the higher end learning, the deep understanding that we're hoping through creating, through developing individuals' perspective on and demonstrating what they know and can understand. So I appreciate it, and it's also about being learners, modeling the sense of learning. So I appreciate all your willingness to dive right in there to try this out. So I know I have to say as we close this segment that I look forward to having continuing conversations with the three of you to have you come back to show more about what you're accomplishing in the class and how you're helping our students prepare for adult life in the 21st century. So thank you very much.
Great.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
So to begin our conversation this evening, we're going to focus in on how technology is redefining teaching and learning under the notion of STEM. And I believe STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Mathematics. And it's my pleasure to have three of our technology teachers here this evening to really talk about what's been happening in our middle school and high school under this notion of STEM. And so Ron Nobles, technology teacher at Hommocks Middle School, Grace Brew, technology teacher, and math teacher Jigar Jadav is here as well to kind of share their impressions about what's happening in the world of STEM. And so maybe Ron and Grace, we can talk about your experiences the last 2 years in terms of your course, the shift in thinking about the focus and how it relates to STEM. So welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're really developing the middle school curriculum around the STEM program, focusing mostly on technology and engineering. Our focus with the students is trying to have them view the program as a future step to where they may want to go in high school and even on into college. So really about exploring different avenues for students and giving them different experiences with engineering and technology.
So how does that translate into the real world of middle school in terms of those experiences?
I think it's a good point. One of the things that we really want to focus on is getting them ready for a career, in the high school and college as well. But we're able to kind of tie in some of those principles in math and science and use them for real preparedness for a career or for college. So we're really taking some of the skills that they're going to need, like programming and engineering design and robotics, and we're making it more of a real-world experience for the student.
So I know that through the generosity of one of our residents, we had the opportunity to purchase 3 3D printers. So maybe you can tell our audience, I know there's been a lot of attention in the press about 3D design, and maybe you can talk about how 3D design is really shaping or reshaping your thinking about this idea of engineering and design.
Well, the 3D printers in the middle school was such a wonderful present to us and the students. We feel that we have changed our curriculum where they're actually now getting into designing different aspects of certain projects, like our MEGLab levitation project that they will be working on in 7th grade, and actually designing it through Rhino, which is a engineering program, and then actually coming out with the 3D printer, their prototypes.
So it really combines this idea of the principles design and infusing programming as part of this, and so it really in some ways replicates what is happening out in that professional world in thinking as well. And to that point, Jigar, I know that we this year you have a lot of things happening in our computer science program at the high school that really in some ways builds on the work that Ron and Grace are doing.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to thank these guys first of all because, through our conversations, they've started this great program at the middle school. And for example, robotics is something that Ron and Grace started at the middle school. And then so that makes my job at the high school easier in terms of getting the students excited because they've already been exposed. And robotics is like Ron said, it's a great integration of STEM disciplines. And my main objective is to have students focus on computer science from the perspective of programming. Because as you can see, we have a robot sitting right here, which if you don't program it, is just a sitting duck. So a mechanical duck, but it is it's a wonderful sitting duck without the programming piece. So my goal with the course is to have students get really excited about the courses that we offer at the high school and prepare them for the more advanced courses like Computer Science 2 and Advanced Computer Science, which we are going to start offering soon as an advanced placement course. So again, that's just a way to get students more excited and make it more accessible to students.
So when we talk about design at the middle school program, as much as we shift to the high school, your work this year with the Android and app design, how is that kind of extending what Ron and Grace are doing at the middle school?
So one of the things that we are doing at the middle school is we actually run a tech club together at the middle school. That's how I have my presence at the middle school, and it's great working with these guys side by side. And one of the things that we want to do is expose students this year on doing Android app development, and that could be something with as simple as doing some basic foundations, and they would teach students how to do app development through a hands-on experience. And then once they get to the high school, then I can take what they learn at the middle school and do more advanced app development with them. And thanks to the foundation grant that I got this school year, we have Android tablets which I can use to test the apps which my students will be building. So it's really exciting. It's an exciting course.
Yeah, and there's so much energy around us, in the STEM areas, the maker movement that has really organically kind of come to the forefront. And so I have to ask, it's interesting, not only are you offering courses, obviously as part of our curriculum, your technology sequence of 6th, 7th, 8th grade and into the high school, but you have an active group that is participating after school. What is it about this idea of STEM that kids really enjoy and are really interested in?
I think one of the big things is it's such a hands-on curriculum. I think that there's so many times in a school where there's kind of like this generic thing, learn this just because you need to know it. And I think one of the things that happens when you come into a classroom like the three of us, what the three of us are doing in our classroom is the kids are able to really grab something and see it come to life. So they're designing something on a 3D printer. In 7th grade, we go through the engineering design process. They're able to see it on a real scale and put their hands on it and actually create it and make it happen. And I think the same is true when they're doing programming, when they're building robots. They can see a robot, see a program, see everything come to life. And we're seeing the same thing at our after-school program as we take them through an entire process. And I think it's exciting for students to be able to put their hands on something and actually see it work. And
so, Grace, for example, in your afternoon program last year and now into this year, what are the types of projects that students are working on?
This is fantastic because this year we're really focusing on getting more involved with different projects. Jigger does a nice job with introducing students to the Scratch programming and getting a little advanced on that, but we'd also like to take it into starting out robotics for the students in the after-school program. Well, they might have a small competition with the robotics. We're also continuing with bridge designing, where we're constructing like engineering bridges, and where they test them, which is really exciting, and different aspects, and even bringing science into it, where we're going to be testing different applications and theories of science.
Interesting, interesting. So I have to ask, I've noticed in my opportunity that the interest for both boys and girls seems to be the same, right? That STEM kind of crosses over to the world that both boys and girls are excited by opportunities.
Absolutely. I think both genders bring a lot to the table. And just like real world situations, it's the collaborative and team effort that we try to simulate in our classrooms with these projects that helps them team build and really focus on working together and bringing what they can to the table.
Yeah, and I know I had the opportunity, Jigger, to visit your robotics classroom, and I noticed that they are working in groups. Absolutely. And to Grace's point, and they all seem to have a specific responsibility.
Absolutely. One of the things that I want to do in my robotics class is to simulate how it works in a real world. So there's a big myth that programmers work in isolation, which is not true, not anymore. Maybe back in the days it was true. So now I want students to be able to do different roles. So I have teams of 3 or 4 students working on a project where one person is a project manager, another person is a builder, and the third student would be a programmer. And these roles, they change as we change projects. So the idea is that by exposing students to different sort of jobs, it actually makes them more curious about the different aspects of project management or programming or building. Yeah, so that I think that allows me to integrate project management and all these different aspects together.
So maybe we can just, as we move closer to wrapping up this segment, talk about this idea of a 6 through 12 curriculum, and maybe you can kind of highlight what it looks like as we move through the grades into high school and where we'd like to go.
Yeah, I think that right now at our 6th grade level, we are working on creating some scratch programming where the students are able to actually program their own little kind of mini video game. And we use something called a makey where the students actually can create their own video game controller and control their own video game. Then we get into the keychain with the 3D printers in 6th grade, which is just a small, quick design using Rhino. They get there quickly, and they also create a little air racer. But that feeds into 7th grade where they actually create something, you know, the Mag Lab, which is 3D, which is all out and part of the engineering design process. And then when we get into 8th grade, we're into robotics, which ties the programming in with the building and design. And then they also are using the Rhino, which is the design program, to do some architecture.
So you're really covering a lot of ground. You're really covering all the letters of STEM in many respects.
We're trying to.
Absolutely.
And then Jigar, what does your course sequence look like this year?
Sure. I think, like these guys said, you know, they do a great job at introducing different aspects of STEM, and by the time they get to high school and into college, they get more and more specialized. So currently we have 3 courses that we're offering to our students at MHS. We have Computer Science 1, Computer Science 2, and Robotics. And we are gearing next school year for an advanced placement course, AP Computer Science. And again, the goal is to prepare these students to go into more advanced programming courses and into AP. And I think the whole objective here is to get them more excited about these disciplines and integrating them, because they can easily integrate all these different like math, physics, engineering. All these can be integrated into robotics, for example. And again, computer science is another aspect of robotics that I want students to focus on, which is much more focused. So again, so it's great to be working with these guys on developing this program.
Yeah, and it's interesting. We've had tremendous support in the community. I know the STEM Alliance, a large group of parents throughout our community have really kind of dedicated time and energy to help promote STEM disciplines, and certainly providing a program with a lot of support, whether it be their professional expertise, their interests, their certainly support through grants as well, and so it's exciting. But for me, it's incredible to see the number of students who are enrolling now in high school, as high school students in the courses, but really starting with the interest at the middle school program. So it's great that we're able to have this really 6 through 12 model evolving and developing, and certainly having you really each day really promote the idea of STEM and the possibilities of STEM.
And we also have I forgot to mention, we have a computer science club at the high school where students are doing projects. For example, one big project last school year was building a 3D printer. And this year, some of my students are already working on developing apps on the iOS platform. So again, so this is a really open-ended environment. Students are learning and teaching from one another, and it's a wonderful environment. There's no pressure where, you know, of a test or a project or anything, but they kind of, you know, student-driven more like.
Well, yes, so as we wrap up, I think I have to say I appreciate your commitment to promoting STEM and the idea that it really is hands-on learning, that it really promotes the sense of creativity and challenges our students to really build a strong foundation in emerging areas of technology and science and engineering and design. So we would like to have you come back in the future to kind of continue to share what's happening in your classrooms, and I thank you for really providing our community with a glimpse of what's happening in technology and computer science in our school district. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.